8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Recorded in the Rob Christensen Radio Network's socially distant studios, it's the Film Friday 5-ish with your host, Rob Christensen. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Film Friday 5-ish with me, your host, Rob Christensen. My co-host from Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, Jim Chaboyka, will be joining us, as well as a special guest, Cody Brockopp from the Brockopp Side. And today we are going to be discussing, apparently, in a major break from tradition, Warner Brothers, shock of shocks, streaming service has been around for 10 years? Warner Brothers moves to debut all its 2021 movies simultaneously on HBO Max and in theaters, which is a bit of a shocker and certainly has got people abuzz. So with that intro done, I am going to bring in first my co-host with the most, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jim Chaboyka. Say hello to everybody.
Check, check. Am I coming in?
You are coming in, my friend.
This
All
home
right.
popcorn sucks.
All righty, and now let's also give a big warm welcome to our friend from down south, the man from Nevada, Nevada. Ooh, we're going to get corrected, I think, or well, I'll be corrected, Mr. Cody Brockopp.
Hey, what's up?
The machine moves forward.
Yep.
Cody, nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
All right, gents. I figure, you know what? We've got a few people in. We actually do have a few people watching as we speak. Oh, look at this. Cynthia on Facebook is saying, I look and sound very dapper. I do. Or they could be talking about you, Jim. You're looking pretty. Well, I'm not even going to say pretty fly, except I just did. Cody, you've got a nice, relaxed Midwestern style going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's Friday, so you know.
Oh, and the studio's looking. You're building it out, baby. That's looking good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Cynthia, welcome. And for those other folks that are watching and haven't, feel free to chime in and chat. Comment down below if you're watching this after, but join the conversation. Love to hear from you and what your take is on this big story and what the three of us are talking about. So, with that out of the way, gents, I'm going to just put it, maybe Jim, if it's cool with you, we'll let our company, Cody, chime in first. Cody, tell me, are we doomed? Is it all over? No more movies? We should just give up now and accept television. Maybe go back to the old 640 by 480 aspect ratio. I don't know. What do you think? Give us the hot take.
I wouldn't say we're doomed necessarily. I mean, the movies themselves are still going to come out, but you know, the way the year has been, it's like everybody kind of needs to think fast and not stay too married to traditional plans and things like that. So I think kind of like what we mentioned in the last time we were together talking about the Wonder Woman getting the HBO Max and theatrical treatment. At first, It was like, okay, this is going to be a cool little experiment to see how it goes. But apparently, Warner Brothers like, you know what? Nope, this is going to work 100%. It's foolproof. We're going to do every single movie this way. So I guess they have a lot of confidence in that model. But at least it's not like exclusive HBO Max. It's also HBO Max and a theatrical release. So the option is still available, which I think will make some people happy. But I do understand where that doomsday scenario is coming in, where it's like, oh, this is the death of the theater sort of thing. But I honestly don't think it is quite yet. Just kind of, I think it's just the studio simply adapting to this crazy climate that we're living in right now.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Thanks very much, Cody, for that. You make a couple of great points. Jim, testify, brother. Is it all done? Are we all over? Is it all over?
It gives the Peter Bogdanovich movie, The Last Picture Show, a new meaning. But anyway, it's a bit of a deep cut, 1970 something. But yeah, it might change. I always think in a situation like that, I would love to be in, maybe just for a little while, on the meeting that took place to discuss all these things. That comes up occasionally, where you think, hey, you know what I think would be a good idea? Let's just put it all on television or whatever, on HBO. I think it's a stopgap, perhaps, for now. I'd hate to say that it's totally done, but it'd be interesting to see where it continues from here. Just as you guys were talking, I was thinking, I wonder if any studies, there must be some thesis paper out there done by people who looked at drive-in theaters and how they went from, we went in Winnipeg from having 6, and some of them went through the winter down to none, in the space of, a couple generations. So, I'd be sort of, this needs a long lens, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. I just pulled up, and it's something I wanted to bring up. Let me throw it on the screen exclusively. Do you guys remember this? It's about 7 years ago. George and Steven both saying basically VOD is the future, and that it be, let's see, I'm going to scan through here and then I'll zoom in. Speaking about the big major cinemas, predicted theatrical motion pictures will become a niche market. That's right. See if I can't. They're going for the gold, but that isn't going to work forever. And as a result, they're getting narrower and narrower in their focus, thinking about the MCU now. People are going to get tired of it. They're not going to know how to do anything else. You know what? I think this is forcing them to think a bit out of the box, but we'll see how it plays out. But Spielberg noted that because so many forms of entertainment are competing for attention, they would rather spend $250 million on a single film than make several personal quirky projects. There's eventually going to be a big meltdown. There's going to be an implosion where 3 or 4 or maybe even half a dozen of the mega budgeted films go crashing into the ground. That's going to change the paradigm. But I think this is the key one. Lucas predicted that after that meltdown, although they were thinking it was going to be a market-driven one, you're going to end up with fewer theaters, bigger theaters with a lot of nice things. Going to the movies will cost $50 or $100 or $150, like what Broadway costs today. Although I can say I have been to a couple of nice big shows in that Broadway over the pond, and you can find cheap tickets.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was interesting, gents, in the just in that idea that what I have been saying has been this is an acceleration of changes already happening. So I Cody, you and I have talked about this. Jim, you and I have talked about this. I'm actually we'll get into the micro, but on the macro level, I'm just like, well, yeah, someone had to break. I'd be interested. I didn't have a chance today to pull up the balance sheet, but all these things sit on a river of debt, and bankers aren't giving anyone any holidays, not unless they're made to. So yeah, maybe it was Warner Brothers and their corporate parent, kind of going, yeah, just get them out. We got to get some money.
Yeah.
What else do you think, though, are the immediate ramifications? And I'm kind of wondering, gents, could this be an elaborate, well, a rather elaborate, but maybe part of the meetings you're talking about, Jim? What do we think? Is this something where they went to the theaters and said, well, if you give us 95% of the box office, we'll still put movies in there? Was it like a bit of a cash grab, or just desperation, or just, well, the writing was all on the wall? And I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think it is a little bit of a desperation thing. And it's kind of funny that you point out the whole, like, oh, we're the studio, give us more of the ticket sales and we'll keep putting your movies in our theater. Because, I feel like that's happened a couple of times. I think Disney, like a few years ago, were like demanding 60% ticket sales, not just a, basic 50%.
Yeah.
So I think that part is entirely possible. But, like we mentioned with the whole Wonder Woman situation, it's like they have all these major, 9, 10 figure movies that, people can't really go to see in a theater the same way they could a year ago. So it's like, okay, we're sitting on so many major movies and, we're obviously going to take a financial loss, but we just kind of got to get them out there. Otherwise, they're just going to keep piling up and piling up and piling up. So, yeah, I think it is a little bit of a desperation, but also them trying to see where audiences' heads are at and, where they might want to be, watching these new movies with or without a pandemic going on, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Jim?
Yeah, we drop the phrase inside baseball a lot, and I think that sort of, talking about the two different parties going on there, I think that's really inside baseball. But I've heard things like conspiracies to shut down all theaters and all that kind of stuff. Incidentally, I was reading something this year. What was it now? Oh, it was a tweet by a bunch of Urbex guys, all the little channels, people that explore old buildings and things like that, usually illegally. But one of them said, this is
urban spelunkers.
Yeah. And one of them said that this is one of New York City's great old theaters. There used to be 500 in New York City. Now there's 50. And that blew me away, because that was, for a place like New York City, there's more than 50 movies about New York City.
I think I took a quick scan of that chat that thread you were on, Jim.
Yeah.
Was it you asked or somebody asked? Yeah, but how many screens?
Somebody else, yeah. I just liked the comment, so it sort of rattled around there for a bit. But at the same time, I was just talking with a friend, Vlad, just on email there. One of the people that shows up.
One of our regular
chats.
Viewers.
Yeah, and he said he was really looking forward to Mank, because Mank is out today on Netflix, and that sort of reminded me, which is the new David Fincher movie. That sort of reminded me that there used to be a whole crowd that used to go out on the premiere weekend just to see a new movie. Like, the movie theaters would be packed, and it would be because they were events. They would be it'd be something. Get on your good shirt, honey. Let's go to them. Whatever. We'll get popcorn and everything, and it was an actual thing. And I don't. I think people will miss that. I don't think streaming has the same cachet. I mean, you get to see it and everything, and there's tons of options. But we can go into the differences later on about the movie experience versus the home experience. But the opening of a movie used to be an event, and I think a lot of people, and it would reflect in the box office there. You'd see millions and millions and millions, and then it would drop off fairly quickly. Even in successful movies, there was a natural dropping off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard thing to, I'm not in the room, so I'm sort of unaware of the.
Well, that's why we're here. We get to speculate.
Speculate proudly.
You know what? We're in this room, Jim.
Damn it. So anyway, is showing movies on screens so inconvenient for all the parties that show movies on screens? Is I guess what I'm sort of throwing out there. I can't think it is. But,
how do you mean? Like,
well, they maybe figure they don't make their money back, or it's a pain in the neck, or the audiences are dropping off, or there's all the toing and froing and that kind of thing. But
I'm not. Well, Cody, what do you think about that? Like, I mean, I'm one of those people who's like, yeah, it's gonna be rough, and the system's going through a big change right now.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to be what was your previous example, Jim? We're not seeing the end of vaudeville. I don't think we're seeing the end of
drive-ins, I think.
Drive-in theaters, thank you. Which were really kind of a very niche market anyway. A post-war kind of, hey, everyone did this because baby boom, sex in cars,
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. What do you think about that longer? What do you think about that, Cody? Let's put the spotlight on Cody. All of it on Cody.
He speaks for everyone.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Do you mean like kind of like what Jim was saying about how, maybe sometimes going to a theater to see a movie could be a little bit of a drag as opposed to other movies where it's like, oh, it's an event, we gotta,
maybe
get excited.
Even for the business itself, like the capital involved, like Jim says, is it a pain in the ass? Is it one of those things where the money is kind of there's easier ways to make money. Maybe we'll just put it all on television.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a strong believer that there's always going to be those movies that people are going to want to go see in a theater, the MCU is the biggest, game in town right now, even in a year where none of their movies came out. But, rewind back to Avengers Endgame, and it was a pain in the ass to try to get tickets for that because people just, they want to see it on the largest screen they can with the best sound system, surrounded by hundreds of fans. So it's like, I think they would prefer that experience versus, watching it at home. Some of them would prefer just to watch at home, but other people are like, yeah, I want to see this, epic event movie on this big screen surrounded by people screaming and cheering like I'm going to be, which just overall enhances the experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's always going to be those movies that will drag people to the theater, but, there are going to be those movies like those, low-level romantic comedies and stuff where it's like, it's good for a date night, but not much else where it's like, do you really want to pay $8, $12 to go see it? And, you can make a whole day out of it, but, it's like, you could just stay at home, order takeout, and get it that way.
Mm-hmm. Or take a part in other outdoor, out of the house activity on a date night. Kind of like what Jim was saying earlier about that. There are some things that you want to have a communal experience on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
I want a quick note. Jim, guess who's in the chat?
I saw.
Ahmed Jelly Duck.
Whoa, I don't know who that is.
But you participated anyway, Cody. This is we have a small audience, Cody, but it is both loyal and global.
Those are the best kinds of audiences.
I think so. Jim and I are convinced of that. Ahmed is he's hailing from Kuwait. And you'd start to when we put up our thing, I try and remember to put up the UTC offset because it's like it's a factor for our folks, but it's great to see Ahmed. What about going back to what you're saying there, Cody? Yeah, I don't, and this is where I think some of the doom and gloom is off a little. I honestly don't see, guys, where it's like all of a sudden it's just, it's all done. I mean, maybe a big shrink, kind of like radio had to fundamentally change what it did. And film has already been through a couple of these big shocks. Cheap radio had a huge impact on it, but television, really changed the game for film, and they reacted with Cinerama and VistaVision and the first wave of 3D. But yeah, I agree with you guys. There's going to be those cultural events and things that only can see in the big screen. But while I see where Lucas and Spielberg were coming from, that certainly is the way it looked then. I mean, heck, they of all people should know Westerns lasted forever. Forever. They just never, it was the genre that would never die. And then it came back in Star Wars.
Yeah.
So their prediction, I think the heart of their prediction was wrong, but I think what's going to happen, the thing about VOD and everything. Yeah, we're seeing it now. Let me ask you this. I got to admit, one of my initial reactions is like, Netflix must be going. So anyway, exhibitors, about that window, we're gonna do away with that now, because I'm kind of wondering, Netflix has been locking up talent. How much talent are they just, we'll buy you, we'll get you in a development deal? What do you guys think about that? Like, am I crazy? Like,
no, it sheds new light on that. Like, once you start, you give Barack the handshake, I think you're, and apparently, what are they doing? It came out exactly one of the projects they were doing was a comedy, I think, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Both the Obamas, but yeah, I mean, in terms of name recognition and sort of, if you're going to get a big name, you can't get much bigger than that.
Well, but I'm not sure that's the cinematic big name, though.
That's true.
But Charlize Theron,
yeah,
she just did a deal with HBO or one of these. Like, it looks like she's done with her Netflix deal. Does this ring a bell, Cody? Like, I'm sure. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, though? That idea of Netflix going to the exhibitors and kind of going, I know you didn't like what we were saying before, but maybe we should revisit this. All of a sudden, Netflix can, for the really big pictures, put them on big screens, not having to worry about, could some of the streamers be the rescuers of theater?
That's a good question, actually, because because Netflix does release some of their movies theatrically, albeit for a very limited time period, but they do have them, like El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie. They had that for like a weekend, I think, in a theater, and I went to go see it, took my uncle to it, because it was like, oh, we get to see this Netflix movie on the big screen, that's super cool.
Yeah.
And then a few other ones like that, so I think maybe like having the ability to go see a movie like that on the big screen if you want to, and then, you could turn around like the day after and watch it again on Netflix at home if you wanted to. I think that does bring up some kind of potential there. Especially they can have it be like longer than one weekend for these releases. But I think that does kind of go back to what you guys were saying a minute ago about movie theaters becoming more like a more premium experience, maybe, to where it's like there's not as many as there are right now, but the ones that are around are higher quality, got the good seats, got the good sound system. Tickets might go up a little bit, but that way they'll be treated more like an event for those people that want to go see that kind of thing. So I think it could kind of become more like live theater almost, to where it's like you can't really stream a play on Netflix or something like that, you have to go to the theater to experience it truly, unless they release one of those direct-to-video adaptations like Hamilton or something. So I do think there is a potential for the streamers to kind of be like, hey, we're all about watching at home, but maybe some of these movies you want to watch on a big screen, so here's the option for like a week, soak it up, and then you can go watch it at home, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or even like just copying the HBO Warner Brothers thing. It's like, yeah, as long as you allow us to co-release, like do it at the same time, sure, we'll take maybe a lower cut.
Yeah.
For that first couple of weeks, because that makes a lot of people happy, and the theaters are going to be desperate for content if all of a sudden they're going to be losing seat sales to these guys.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
And I think one good detail about the HBO Warner Brothers thing is that with that deal, it's like the new movies like Wonder Woman, Matrix, things like that, they're going to be simulcast at theaters for about a month total. So like you can watch on HBO Max for a month, and then it'll do its theatrical run. Then it'll go to VOD and Blu-ray and stuff, probably like usual. So it's not just like a Netflix original where it's like, here, it's on Netflix, we didn't tell you it was coming, but here it is. You can watch it forever. So it's like, there's still going to be that limited window to watch it for free. So it's not just like throwing money out the window. So it's not just like, here, you want to see the new Matrix movie? Here you go. You can watch it anytime you want for the rest of your life. It's like, no, watch it for a month, and you're going to have to pay for it afterwards. So I think that's also what's going to help with the theaters a little bit, though. So that it's not like I can either spend money to go see in the theater, or I can watch on HBO forever and ever. So I think having that limited window is a good idea, though.
Yeah. Jim, what do you think of that idea? Like, I mean, that streamers might, like the full-on streamers, Amazon Prime seem to have a better relationship with, oh, sure, well, I'll let it in the theater for a while and then we'll do our thing. But like this gives Amazon Prime, like those dedicated streamers, Amazon Prime and Netflix, more clout, I would imagine.
Yeah. The interesting thing here too is that in a way.
Oh, and quick note, Jelly Duck, we appreciate that you woke up crazy early and that you're spending that time with us. So,
woo,
if I had a breakfast Danish,
that's pretty early.
Yeah. Okay,
maybe he hasn't gone
Jim.
to bed yet. That's the other alternative.
Oh.
He doesn't say he was sleeping.
Either way, he's a real one, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, Jelly Duck, you'll have to fill us in on the. Give us more background if you feel comfortable. Sorry, Jim. Back to you on the dedicated streamers.
Not so much about the dedicated streamers, but I just wanted to quickly add this point: is that we were talking earlier about movies that had occasionally been, streaming movies that had appeared on theater screens. If you recall, that's part of the Oscar nomination process, and in a way, it's not an afterthought, because it does have to be in a theater. But Roma, for instance, that played in theaters late in December, the year that it was eligible and nominated. And so in a way, that little sort of clause, I think ends up probably helping out movies. It still gives it a little bit of that cachet about actually being in the theater. So you can say that Oscars maybe go a little bit to keeping that tradition alive. And so I think that's all part of the same kind of parcel, is that there is that sort of, again, cachet about having it in an actual theater and then having it on your own streaming service. I should mention that the last few years, and we've talked about it, I don't think I've talked about it on the show, but you're talking about the various YouTube channels that deal with movie music and things like that. when you go to something like, the symphony orchestra at the Pops, or they talk about movie music and they play it, you tend to take
Sideways.
Yes, Sideways. Sorry. You tend to take the musical aspect of it a little more seriously, and you really can't get a better sound system than at the movie theater itself. And I'm often making my wife stay through the entire credits just so I can listen to the music, because you're not going to get a better, the next best sound system I own is in my car probably. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah. And that was the one that came with the car. But anyway, so I think there's still something to be said for having it there and having the experience. One last little anecdote. Years ago, when I, movies were still my sort of, before I started traveling and that sort of thing, it was in Vancouver one summer, and they re-released Lawrence of Arabia in one of those old downtown theaters that Vancouver still has a few of them. And they had that surround sound. I can't remember the actual name of it, but it was probably one of the first instances of it. And that scene where Lawrence of Arabia goes to meet the Omar Sharif character in the tent, for the first time in my life, you could hear the tent was covered with bells, and the desert wind was coming through. And for the first time in my life, I heard movie sounds behind me. And it gave you this effect that you were in the tent with these guys. And, in terms of movie experiences, I don't think you can get really much better than that. So, I mean, I'm still a fan, but
yeah. I think, guys, the doom and gloom is the experience is going to change. The frequency we go at is going to change. Right now, it's just they're under such a crunch financially, all the players. To the conspiracy theorists, I say it's like, what? Well, yeah, okay, I'm going to say this, but I don't mean to get people wound up. Yes, there was a conspiracy in the American election. 80 million Americans got together and said, you know what? I'm going to check my box here. There's your conspiracy. If there's a change in tastes, in living, the way we live, all these things, this is not a factor of, some dark cabal, trying to, it's like the video games, exactly.
Finger.
Let me ask you guys this. Go to Cody. Let's put the focus on Cody in a second. Who do you think's next? Of course, we got NBC Universal. We have CBS is part of Viacom, so that's Paramount. Disney is kind of Disney, ABC, Supercorp, Fox, etc. is kind of, we're starting to see they're like the half version now. Okay, well, some of it will. Who's next? Who says, oh, screw it, we got to do that too?
Honestly, I'm kind of surprised it was Warner Brothers that made this leap first and foremost. I kind of thought if anybody, Disney might do it, because, they did their Disney Plus thing first. It's been a big push. They started putting, their movies this year on Disney Plus, pretty quickly, like Onward and that Artemis Fowl movie that everybody hated. And they're going to have Soul, their new Pixar movie, they're going to have that out. So I'm kind of surprised that they didn't get to that first. So I do think maybe they'll be next, but also you mentioned Paramount and CBS, which kind of brings up an interesting thing because, they have their streaming service, CBS All Access, yeah. Well, actually, they're going to be rebranding that in 2021 to Paramount Plus, super original name.
Okay.
Because people are like, oh, well, what is CBS All Access? It's like the TV channel, but on line, and they're going to be releasing.
I thought that was called YouTube.
They're going to be releasing a couple of their, not so much like Avengers level movies out there, but like the new SpongeBob movie, which would have been a good like traffic for family audiences and stuff. That's going to debut on CBS only. So I think all the studios are going to maybe slowly dip their toes into this, simulcast thing. But I kind of feel like maybe they're like, it's kind of like in a fantasy movie where all the heroes are like right across like some dark tunnel or some creepy bridge. They're like, okay, this is really dangerous. You go first, guy. Just go ahead. Kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Saul was like, asps, very dangerous. You go first. So I think they're just gonna wait to see, like, give somebody else a first stab at it, see how that goes, and then if success comes their way, they can be like, okay, let's start going this way too. So I think it's just part of the experiment process, but I do think probably Disney will go first, and maybe Paramount, because they're both, slowly making their way into the streaming verse more and more every day.
Who, guys, help me out here. Tenet, was that Paramount?
That was Warner Brothers.
It was Warner. Oh, okay. So, Jesus, they were the first in anyway. Like well, no, they were the other way around. Maybe yes. How does that change our understanding of this choice? They're the ones who, I don't want to say got burnt on Tenet, but
yeah. But it was like somebody had to do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still feels like it hasn't been released to me, but I didn't. I'm sort of still waiting to see it, but
I saw it.
You and I are. Yeah. Cody's a little more adventurous than you and I are, Jim. He's a young man. Well, okay, Jim, what do you think? Who do you think's going to go next?
Yeah.
And I suppose we've got to allow for the fact that no one else goes next. Or heck, things change so radically in the first quarter of the new year that Warner Brothers, Warner Media owns HBO, they could go back on their deal. They just say, oh, wow, things really improved. People, I can't believe I'm saying this. People really knuckled down and we licked this thing. But I could see, let's say the first quarter is really promising. All of a sudden it's like, well, maybe, I
don't know that people had. I'm not sure the sales of the tickets to Tenet, what kind of box office they had, but I can't imagine. I have to imagine that is a fraction of what they normally would have collected. But
by hundreds of millions.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I keep on reading
Several
words like disappointing and that sort of thing too. So. Yeah, it's tricky. I would think I think it would have to be tied in with releases. Cody just mentioned Soul, the next Pixar movie, and that's a 10-pole if I've ever seen one. So, you have to...
Which is going online, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like Soul, right?
I have to...
Disney Plus, Christmas Day.
Yeah. Listen, we got another guest. The Upside Dan. Hello, sir. Good to see you. Not only is he someone watching, a fellow YouTube movie reviewer guy, so definitely another inside baseball dude. Also, he's got a prediction. He figures he's with you, Cody, and figures Disney will be next. And then we also... Ahmed Jelly Duck also agrees about Disney. And then, hello, Mr. Long.
This guy again. Watch out for this guy,
Cody.
We are handsome fellas. Every damn one of us.
With our glasses let's
get all
hair.
close. Let's all get tight in together. Arms. Great to see you, Jamie. Thanks for popping in. And always, thanks for the props. Thanks for the compliment. Where the heck were we?
Disney.
Disney.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, these are the folks they're predicting. Okay, so what are we missing here? What is the question we're not asking? Like there's, you know what? It's funny. There is a piece in, and I'll see if I can't find it shortly. And now Jamie's taking it into a direction I'm not sure we're comfortable in.
Yeah, his heart moved, that's all. Totally not something else.
Jelly Duck's getting in on the action here.
I mean, is he wrong?
I don't
I'm in the
think
room.
so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What? I'll see if I can pull it up. There's a piece talking about how movie theaters dealt with it in 1918. Like for 3 years, for all intents and purposes, the industry was shut down. You know, because of the Spanish flu. So, but of course, my immediate reaction, guys, was like, well, people didn't have the entertainment choices they do now. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
You know, I sort of wonder that if seeing a movie in a theater now is going to become like almost become like a hipster kind of experience, you know, like the authentic kind of thing, you know, in a few years. There was a Halloween episode of the sitcom Superstore, and Jonah, who's the hipster character who uses the word curate too often and things like that, he tries to get everybody out to go see the silent showing of Nosferatu. and they're all like, oh, whatever. They sort of reluctantly go along with him, and that's I mean, that was me a few years ago seeing Sunrise at Cinematheque, but you know, I think it might, you know. Yeah, that's very much in the long term. It's a funny one.
Well, and that's an interesting. Like, Cody, what's the art house cinema scene in? Like, are you in Las Vegas? And how am I supposed to pronounce Nevada?
Not the way you just pronounced it. It's pronounced Nevada. So not Nevada, Nevada.
Nevada.
So
Nevada.
No emphasis on, not so much emphasis on the A there.
Yeah.
Nevada. Asking if I'm technically in Las Vegas is kind of a tricky thing because the main area is kind of like 4 different cities clumped together, basically. So, you know, like Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and a bunch of other ones. But yeah, I mean, I don't look too much into like the art house scene of things, but I know there's a little bit of it out there. But I kind of get where Jim's coming from, where it's like kind of sort of a hipster thing might happen. I hope not, because I hate the term hipster like with a passion. But
yeah, I sort of use it reluctantly. I should.
Yeah, but also it's not like, you know. Not to nab on Nosferatu or anything, but Nosferatu is not exactly it's not exactly like most movies we have nowadays.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's gonna necessarily become like a hipster thing, but I think we are gonna slowly have it become more of a kind of a specialty type way to see a movie. So it's not just the number one way to see a movie. It's like, you want to pay a little more, then you can go see it in a theater with the big screen, the lovely sound, experience it the way you can at home, for those that care about that sort of thing. You know, we have movie theaters right now that are playing like a huge catalog of classic movies, you know, that are stuff from like, you know, 30, 40 years ago to stuff that's only like 5 years ago. So it's like
see Raiders of the Lost Ark remastered.
Exactly.
You know,
I did that one time. It was amazing. So I think, you know, maybe having that option out there somewhere, so it's almost like a artsy type thing. It's like, oh, let's go see Raiders of the Lost Ark, or, you know, the original Ghostbusters in theaters. So it's kind of like almost part of a, I don't want to say novelty experience, but it's like, it's a new, more exciting way than just saying, hey, we're at home, we're getting drunk, let's watch Ghostbusters or something, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to welcome someone new to our live stream, Mr. Eric Thorpe. Welcome,
Woo,
sir.
Eric.
Eric says, just let me see No Time to Die in the theaters. And
If it stops getting delayed, baby.
Yeah.
well, you know what? I hope you get what you wish there, Eric. I think those films now. That leads me to a great question. And again, not just for you guys, everybody in the chat. If what we're thinking is possible, that yikes. If what we're thinking is possible, that we'll see a shrinkage of theaters, ticket prices will go up, the big meant for the theater spectacle films, do we see less of them, and do they get like cheaper or more expensive? Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, I mean, do we see, if with less screens, does that actually just mean we're jamming more people in? Like, it's still the same box office, or it's like, now $50, I pay $50 for a film. What are my expectations all of a sudden? What do we think that might look like? I don't know, Jim. Why don't you
also, let's not forget that the North American model isn't the only, or the American model isn't the only model. I just, being the end of the month or the start of a new month, at the end of every month, I always look at my Hoopla and Canopy credits and see what I can see. And those are, for those who don't know, there's streaming services. We get them free with our library card. And they have a lot of foreign movies and documentaries that may not get as much publicity as other movies out there. And maybe it's going to change into something like the Norwegian model of releasing movies, where you have a couple, or even Canadian, God forbid. But they're not all big splashy things. It's funny. I said to my son a few years ago, I said the Marvel movies that are coming out, and he's 23 now, but he would have been in his teens then. Marvel movies that come, this will end. There'll be an ending for it. Just like Westerns ended. Then
eventually.
The strongman movies of the 80s with the Schwarzenegger, and we watched Die Hard last week, of course, so a bunch of talk came out about that with your Rambos and Jean-Claude Van Damme and all that kind of stuff. And those sort of ended in a way. But I always wondered, what would bring the current superhero, extravaganza to an end. And it might be something like this, where they can't keep putting the same amount of money in as they had. And you have to think that's good. People would notice a difference in scope, just the luxury of it,
Well, and then do we end up, first of all, it's like, Jamie feels, that shit better come with a film degree if he's got to pay $50 a ticket.
I have a film degree, and $50 would be a good deal for one of those damn things, though.
Well, there you go, Jamie. Apparently, it's going to be a lot more. You'll have to go to the theater several times at $50 pop to come close to what a film degree costs. Okay, here's. Oh heck! And I'm really sorry. I wanted to continue on what Jim was saying, but we do have Eric Thorpe says it doesn't see Marvel movies ending since Marvel is an entire studio now, not just a genre. Okay, I wouldn't. Maybe the studio. I'm not sure. I agree with you, Eric. But we should pass this around to everyone.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm, Marvel may change as a studio, but it's still part of the Disney operation. But the superhero genre, maybe not end, but morph to where it's barely recognizable. But and I want to say, Eric, when we were talking about it earlier in the show, we're saying it'll end, but it could, like, it's 50, 60 years of Western films.
Yeah.
Like, they were made in the 30s and right to the 70s and the 20s, the teens. Like, so we weren't necessarily saying, "Oh, that's going to end tomorrow." But
you recognize this. I just wanted to read a quote out while we're talking about this. It's you might recognize it. So a man says to Norma Desmond, "You're Norma Desmond. You used to be in silent pictures. You used to be big." And she says, "I am big. It's the pictures that got small." Anyway.
Well, so, like it is. And maybe it could also be every era. But let's say, you know what, kind of comment on, the continuation of Marvel. And what I'll say, Eric, when you don't see them ending, do you think of it like 50 years from now we'll be watching Marvel movies? Or like you're saying, I don't see this ending anytime soon? I was wondering if you could comment a little further. That would be cool. But Jim, what do you think about Marvel ending versus the genre of superhero films ending?
I don't want to. I enjoy them as much as the next dude. So I'm certainly not, planning the funeral yet. I'm just sort of spitballing or speculating as to the types of things that would make what we expect currently to change. But again, just sort of spitballing out there. They'd probably continue in some form, but these, every trend has an end. We just don't know what it is and what causes it, really.
Where we are in the curve, in its arc.
And also, too, film is a business, right? And the thing that gets you to sign all these people, to have all these, like the Avengers movies, before they came out, I thought they would clatter to the ground because of all the egos involved. You get that many big names in a how can it possibly? You hear fights about people getting billing over others, not with the Avengers, just with other projects. Yeah. They have more lines than I do, that kind of thing. And I just thought this thing is a car crash waiting to happen, and it didn't. But to get all those people on board, that costs a pretty penny to have the scope, the scale. Every minute of film, these things are longer than 2 hours usually. They're expensive. They're expensive films. And the expense is justified. What happens when the expense isn't justified anymore?
Yeah. Well, I'm going back to the talent. What's interesting, other than Robert Downey Jr., yes, they were all. No one went, "Who's this newcomer, Scarlett Johansson?" Yeah. But at the same time, no one thought movie opening. None of them were. They were all developed. Everyone was developed within that system. In a way, they were products of almost like an old school studio system, a pre-World War II studio system. They were turned into stars. And that's why they're early on, when they're looking at these franchise ones, it seems like they get signed up for they're paid well, but they're signed up for a multi film deal right off the bat because they don't want any ridiculous inflation. So I think that kind of helps a Marvel control at least that talent cost and that ego thing. Plus, I think they all kind of, for the horror stories we hear, most are like the working actors going, "Oh my God, I'm locked up for the next 5 years. I don't have to go do an audition unless I want to."
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you? Eric's chimed in, but let's get your thoughts on that. Whoops, did not want to. Nobody needs to see. As I check on Twitter. What are your thoughts on that, Cody? And then Eric's kind of elaborated on his thoughts, and want to get those in here too.
Yeah, I mean, I have thought about like the longevity of not just Marvel movies, but comic book movies in general, because right now we're living in like the peak time for these movies, where it's like thanks to the MCU, everybody wants their, their slice of that pies.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers and DC, they've stepped up their game a lot. Sony's trying to do the same thing, not super successfully, I don't think, but we'll see. But it's like there's always going to be those characters that audiences are going to pay money to see. Like your Batman, your Spider-Man, and other ones like that. So it's like certain, legacy characters like that are always going to have an audience to go see them.
Yeah.
But also, we're in the time of Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff with these really obscure characters, and they pretty much turned into A-list characters. So it's like the list of legacy characters, with audiences, it's expanded quite a bit. So but I don't think we can't keep this continuous wave going on forever. So it's going to die down at some point. But I feel like Marvel's going to be one of those studios that will keep pumping out their movies, maybe not to the exact same frequency they have been, but there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be, some new Avengers crossover, some new characters they want to introduce, and also the fact that they are moving into some TV shows as well, with their Disney Plus shows like WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier. So, like, they want to keep it going, but not necessarily just on the movie screens. So I think we're slowly getting to that point where they're trying to diversify where people can consume their content. So it's like, you want to see this kind of show, you can watch it on Disney Plus. You want to go see something bigger, go to the theater to see that. So I think it just could be a matter of who can adapt to the changing climate and who's going to be left in the dust, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, I'm wondering, guys, like, now I'll talk on the other side of my mouth. One of the things, let's say a Marvel, any of these folks, any of these superhero movies, these big, let's call them hero's journey flicks. These big Manichean, epic is, I don't think the right word, but one of the things that would say to their longevity in theaters, at least, is, yeah, no one's gonna spend $50 to see. I hate to say it, no one's gonna spend $50 to see Roma, and I'd even say in France, let's say, with its own cinema culture, I think video on demand was the last thing that really put the nail in the coffin of art house cinema. Like, there's just too many easier ways to see that stuff than to go to some rundown theater or some tiny venue where you're not even getting that big theater experience.
Well, there's a couple of points just before you continue there. Cody, I don't know if you have this experience, but in Winnipeg, there's it's a mall. It's called Grant Park, and in a couple of the theaters, they spent a good amount of money taking out 60% of the seats and putting in lazy boy recliners, and just sort of trying to up the movie going experience that way. And this just happened in the past year or two.
Like one of those AMC Deluxe.
And it's the whole theater, and you have to buy the tickets a few days ahead of time. Otherwise, and there's really not many. There's maybe 30 in a room, in a theater, and that's just come along in the last little while. And you still have to think, oh yeah, it's a Friday. Everyone's going to want to go. Oh, there's 2 seats left. One's at one corner and the other's at the other corner. So, and I wonder if things like that are either the theater chains recognizing that change is happening, or if it's a sort of a desperation move to make it as comfortable as home with some extras, that kind of thing. But yeah, I thought about that a lot this week. If it was a harbinger or just a sort of a like bad 3D, just sort of a.
I think it was a harbinger. Like that was. The industry was changing already. Sorry, Cody, I kind of stepped on your line there.
Yeah, I think what you said with a lot of theaters, upgrading their seating experience and having less seating, but a more comfortable experience. That's been happening for quite a while now. I've definitely noticed it. There are a couple of theaters around me that are just strictly, the really fancy lazy boys that recline, and you can just kind of lay back and enjoy it. And like AMC theaters, you can, like the IMAX, the Dolby Vision ones, you can recline and enjoy those. So I think it is just trying to up the experience of going to a theater versus staying in your home, because we've all been to those theaters where it's like the seats are old, not super comfortable, and it's but having those like nice leather seats, it's like, oh, that's a lot better. So I think theaters did realize that people are starting to become more and more in tune with watching movies at home, where they've got their comfy couch and all that. So they're like, hey, we can do that too, but we have a significantly larger screen, better sound system, and all that. And also, like what you said with, buying the tickets in advance and things like that. That's kind of part of it too, because it's like, with some of these bigger movies, you want to get your tickets as early as possible to get a good seat.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of assigned seating stuff going on. I think that's just all slowly part of the push of making movie theaters a bit more of a desirable experience going forward. So it's, more like an event, like, oh, we're going to this nice dark room where we can see the new Avengers movie or whatever. So, yeah.
It also could be that the age of the theater goers moving up, maybe?
Yeah,
What do you think?
Yeah.
You know what? I could have done some research before, but I didn't.
You sort of don't know where the conversation is going to take you. But the other thing too that I would add is that these changes come about remember the single screen theater? Those seem like where you're not hearing the explosions from the movie next door. I mean, that seems like a true luxury, never mind chairs these days. And so after years of, cramming us into, I don't know if you guys recall going the first night to see any of the Lord of the Rings movies, but you basically had not a lot of direction on the floor. You had a bunch of 14-year-old ushers trying to control everything, and it felt like a cattle car. Like it was not a great experience that way. So on one hand, all of a sudden the movie theaters are saying, yeah, it's for your comfort, after jamming you into this octoplex, for years and years. And
here. Well, but you look at those changes, that's a fair bit of capital. It's been going on for a few years. In Winnipeg, Cody, we got the VIP theater, which is our first kind of super deluxe experience with liquor. It's, well, even Nevada. Oh, I will now avoid saying it for the rest of the episode. Gents, I do, before we get into, we've got a couple more comments I wouldn't mind touching on before we move to kind of wrap up. But I'm also going to shamelessly beg everyone, you might have seen the tease, but everybody, first of all, want to thank everyone for coming. Thanks for being involved in the conversation and the chat and everything. This is a perfect time, though, for you to if you like this kind of stuff, subscribe. Jim and I watch a movie a week. We pick a movie, we watch it, and then we get online. It's been pretty regularly Sundays where we chat about it. And then we have some other content that comes out occasionally. Kind of like this sort of hot take sort of session. And then, of course, last but not least, don't forget to ring that bell.
Woo! Special effects.
We spare almost every expense.
Well, actually, would it be a special? It's a real bill, so I don't think that even qualifies as special effects. But anyway.
All right, but we do have a couple of comments. First of all, Eric elaborated on his earlier comment, and thank you very much, Eric. I think it is possible that in 50 years we're still watching Marvel movies. No Time to Die is one of the most anticipated upcoming movies, and it's part of a nearly 60-year-old franchise. Excellent point, Eric. Yeah, I was born after the first couple. It has been part of my 53-year-old life, to a point where I'm getting tired of them, but they are not running out of gas. Great point, Eric. Now, on the kind of, let's say, and this is something I was alluding to before, maybe on the flip side, the upside, Dan says, plus, how did they keep topping or equaling Endgame? Yeah. And I think that's part of my, like, if I'm going to a theater, I better have almost a transcendental spectacle experience. Like there's some great, like, awesome actor-driven, talent-driven. Well, they're all talent-driven, but very actorly, playerly films coming out online. Like, and we've seen some greats this last year. That would have been nice to see in a big theater, but not a necessary thing, so I don't think those are going to disappear. But the upside, Dan has a great point here. How do you keep topping that? And then Eric Thorpe, a man after my own heart, VIPs are the best. All right, well, listen, guys, I keep coming back to this. What are we not? I don't think if we were having this conversation 2 years ago, we'd be thinking, oh, pandemic.
Yeah.
Even though risk management types, it's only an unknown for the willfully ignorant and chumps like us. So this is a great opportunity to go, what are we not asking?
There's several. Does this change much does the vaccine change much? I think that's one of the questions. And what's the time scale for that?
Yeah. What do you think? Is there anything? What do you think we're not asking? What we're not factoring in, Cody?
I mean, are the robots going to uprise like within the next year or so, and we're all going to be in some sort of Terminator level thing?
That's a good question too.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible. I mean, last year, or the year before that, I went to CES. I was volunteering in a booth, the Consumer Electronics Show.
Oh, yeah.
And they have all kinds of, robotic stuff there. Like, they had these robots that basically will read to your children, which, it's cool and all, but it also made me realize that if we do have some sort of, Terminator Skynet level uprising, they're not going to be these big, scary, metal skeleton-looking things. They're going to be these, cutesy, smiley face-looking things that are going to come for us before anything else. Maybe the world will go completely to hell within the next, year or so and, get hit by a meteor or some Mad Max-level things will happen. I'm optimistic that won't happen, but it's
it's a form of optimism, I guess.
The world has been very sporadic the last year or so,
That is, it's a hilarious point. Although, and I also would say that to riff further on your comment, it's not going to be Terminator level stuff. We'll just lazy our way into extinction. The robots will be like, no, really, you have to have sex on your own. We can't. All right, well, we'll do it for you, but nothing's going to come of it.
This is taking a hard turn.
Okay. First of all, let's have a little moment of honest sympathy, because this kind of sucks. Eric, obviously a keener for, and now I'm starting to understand his desire to see No Time to Die in the theater, because this has been going on for several months.
Oh, man.
Yeah, 3 sets, all VIP.
Pour one out for the homies. Yep.
Yeah. But let me, honestly, again, the notwithstanding the doom and gloom, and yeah, we're seeing an acceleration in change. Most of it, some theaters are going to close. I've no doubt. Some, and maybe it's not even, although I suspect it will be, it'd be whole theaters. It's like, okay, do we really need 4 megaplexes in this market, or can we kill one and do with 3? I think now you'll see one of these big chains go under, and another outfit take it over that really kind of understands, no, we're not a theater, we're an event space, and we're gonna have our screens doing something every day. We're not gonna get wrapped up in we gotta save it just for the big show. But most of them, it is going to go back to kind of a business as usual. Once, a year from now, most will still be around. Most of the studios will still be like, I don't see this as a mega permanent change. Maybe Netflix is going to have more pull. Maybe the theater chains, like there'll be more consolidation, where the studios will start buying up chains or, but I don't know. Like, what do you guys think? Do you think there's going to be? Oh, and wait, I can't help. Look at this. Shashang.
Whoa! There we go. We're all
Shashang from
showed up.
We are moving around the planet now. Chennai, India, is represented in the house.
Yeah. You need
you guys got a better demographic than I do.
Well, it's small again, Cody, but it wraps the globe.
Cody's
Dan actually
movie corner. Look, there's somebody from Utah.
Eric has started something in the chat now. Dan from the Upside Dan is chiming in about the tickets he got screwed out of because of...
All right, pour another one out.
That's a good idea.
Okay, what and where the hell was it going with that?
I don't know, but please stop saying you lost tickets. I don't want to point my stuff out anymore.
All right, yeah. If you have, you can chime in. But we're gonna save it to the next to our next show, to our next live show. Let Cody finish his own drink.
Yeah,
please.
All right. Any other? Let's try and kind of. We talked about who we thought was going to go first. We've got a couple of votes in the chat. Who's going to break first? Oh, Jim.
I was just gonna say, when I started university all those years ago, back in the 80s, I had one economics professor. At the time, for those who weren't around then, there were a bunch of little neighborhood video stores, and every neighborhood had its own tiny video store, usually run by a dude, and there were rare. This is before Blockbuster. This is before any of the chains came in. Up here, there was a series of Rogers stores. And he said at the time, this is going to change. There's an economic model for this where you have a bunch of little operators, that are on the verge of something that's on something like, video rental that was only going to become bigger, and that would change. And you would have, basically, they would all, what's the word I'm looking for? They would, not agglomerate.
Consolidate.
Consolidate, yeah.
Consolidate. They get bought up.
Yeah. And basically, you wouldn't necessarily have your neighborhood spot where literally there was a video store with, Rob remembers this from our youth, there was 3 or 4 in our area. And they would all So I think, we should take a look at
it was individual operations and
Yep.
then the mini chains. Remember Adi's video?
Yeah.
Well, it was and then the bigger chains came and
bigger
scooped
chains
them
came in.
up.
Yeah.
And there'd be these like side players, the park theaters of video.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of something that we're going to maybe see, except with video store. Instead of video stores, it'll be theaters. But
okay. Yeah. All right. So you've got that thinking. Cody, what do you? So we've got what do you think's going to happen in the next 6 months? A manageable prediction, and don't go crazy. And you get to change your mind later as new evidence comes out. We'll do this more as a forecasting think like a fox, no grand ideas. And then maybe we'll have you back on the show in a couple of weeks to talk a bit more and say, okay, what do we think now? Do we want to adjust our thinking? But give a 6-month window. What are we going to see more of this? Less? Who's next?
I wouldn't be surprised if we did get like more of this simulcast experience going on. Nobody else has announced this since Warner Brothers announced it a day ago. So no one else is like, oh, we gotta jump on this bandwagon just yet. But I do think it is gonna be still part of like the, hey, this is weird. You go first, and if it works, then we'll follow.
Yep.
But movie theaters in some territories have opened back up. I know in Canada it doesn't sound like they have, but it's like people will still go to the theater, but they're not as open as they were, 10 months to a year ago. So I think after like a couple of these big releases come out, like Wonder Woman in a few weeks, and stuff like family movies like the new Tom and Jerry movie come out, that'll be a good sign of, could this be a viable thing until the world stops, losing its freaking mind. And then, hopefully come like, next summer, things could be somewhat more normal with big movies coming out in theaters and things like that. I do think maybe if we can get back to that magical moment where the theaters are back up and running and it's like, oh, it's Thursday evening, let's go see the new Fast and Furious or whatever. I do think maybe the window between theatrical, streaming, VOD, physical it'll shrink a little bit. It seems like it's slowly shrinking more and more all the time. I don't know the exact numbers because I wasn't around, but like if you wanted to go see like Tim Burton's Batman, I don't think it was 3 months between that and the eventual VHS release. It was probably significantly longer, but now it's like nowadays it's like wait 2.5 months, you can go get it on streaming and then on the Blu-ray if you wanted to.
It will be only.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
So I think I think this is going to persist for a little while, but I think we will slowly get back to a more familiar time. But the gap in between seeing it on a big screen versus seeing it on the small screen will get smaller. That's just kind of my prediction.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I want to before we kind of get into final thoughts, I want to bring up Eric Thorpe's comment here. Because yes, this is where I see a post-COVID, post-rationalization, pull another economist's term into the discussion, rationalization in the theater industry. Eric, I was thinking about this afternoon. Eric says, I think it would be awesome to take the opportunity of less movies being out currently to show an entire series like Game of Thrones and put it all in theaters, VIP hopefully, haha, if HBO would agree. I've already seen Eric, both in the States and in other parts of Canada. Jim and I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We're directly north of North Dakota. Our province is different than others. North of North Dakota, exactly, yeah. But what I would be like, I was thinking about this afternoon, there are still these big community experiences, these things that have transcended micro, that market differentiation, that really super hyper niche thing, Game of Thrones, etc. And people were throwing, when that was ending, people were throwing more and more parties, getting together to see it together. Mm-hmm. So it would, I think you could probably, honestly, Eric, go get some friends together, rent a theater and say, here's the DVD, put this on. And you could have that experience now. And they'd be like, oh, well, I'll take $100. Anything. Just, oh God, for the love of God, we need some asses and seats. Let me finish my point and then we'll, I want to hear that. But I think a post-rationalized, post-COVID world, again, where places start to think that these theater chains aren't theater chains as much as they're theater or screen-oriented event centers, where you could say, hey, let's get a bunch of us together to do a watch party because they've got all the other, let's say, legal infrastructure set up where you collect your tickets and you four-wall the end of The Mandalorian. You treat it like that. I think it could enter a different kind of community experience that's different but still hitting those same beats. But now, thanks for that great comment, Eric. Cody, you know what? Why don't you comment on what you're going to say, and then maybe we'll get into final thoughts before we wrap the show up.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned like that whole, hey, here's our movie played on this giant screen for us. Actually, a lot of theaters, like here stateside, are actually starting to do that kind of thing. They have private watch parties where, if you want to go see the new Croods movie, you can pay a little more, have the whole theater to yourself, and like you and like 20 of your closest friends or something.
Yeah.
And some of them have like a, bring your own Blu-ray kind of thing where it's like you could rent out the theater and watch anything you want to within physical means. So that is starting to become a thing. So I think you're not too far off on the money there. And I do think, honestly, like doing a watch party type thing for some of these bigger shows, because, streaming shows and TV shows in general with these premium things, they've led to much higher quality television content, to where if you maybe booked them in the theater like the night before the usual premiere date, people would probably go to that.
Yeah.
Like, I think if they did that with, say, The Mandalorian, do it like a serial from the 1940s where you had to come back every week to see the next part on the big screen.
That's a cool idea.
I think people would totally, if it's the right show, people would definitely do that.
Well, another way to kind of expand the scope of what a theater is, not just studios negotiate product to,
Rob mentioned, before you continue, sorry, Rob, you had mentioned the Park Theater. And again, for those outside of Winnipeg who don't know, the Park Theater, speaking of neighborhood video stores, this was a neighborhood theater. Every neighborhood used to have their single screen theater. Second run. I saw a rear window there for my birthday years ago when they re-released it for the first time at the Park Theater, when it was still a theater. Anyway, it shut down for a bunch of years. And it was just sort of a sad little temple of storytelling there right on Osborne in Winnipeg. And then I saw that it was for sale. Somebody bought it for something like $100,000, probably put 5 times that much into it, reinvigorated it and turned it into a concert venue / movie theater. They've redone it totally. But when it was getting on its feet again, we rented it for my son's birthday for $125 or something to that effect. And when the kids were allowed to play, they could play Nintendo on the big TV screen, or the big theater screen, which ended up being a pretty cool birthday party. And then they gave us a choice of movie to watch afterwards. So, those kinds of options are pretty interesting, I think, anyway.
All right. Okay, so why don't we, before we get into final thoughts, and we do have another comment I'd like to get to, Cody, tell us about your channel, and as soon as I get Jim's nonsense off of there, tell us about your channel, where people can find you on the internet, of course, your YouTube channel, the Brockopp Side YouTube channel. Anyway, tell us and our several viewers why you rock.
My movie channel is basically for those who live, talk, and buy movies. So, if your life is surrounded by movies, watching them, talking about them, and maybe bringing home the occasional Blu-ray or 4K just because you want to continue that experience, my channel is a place for you for that kind of stuff. You can find me on YouTube at the Brockopp Side. Same thing with my Instagram, and you can find me on Twitter at Cody Brockopp, where you can look at all my whimsical tweets and occasionally like them, because I'm the sad little man who needs validation from people on the internet.
Aren't we all?
Welcome to the club. All right. Now, Shashank had a comment here I'd like to bring up before we get into our final thoughts. Ooh, good one. Okay, Shashank at the start. I think we will move towards movies with a lot more exclusivity until and unless it validates that kind of experience, we would end up watching more stuff on streaming. It's going to be a question of, is it worth my time? And you're absolutely right, Shashank. That idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, gents, but that idea, not just the money, but the time, you're going out, so you got to dress up. There's plans to be made. And something that when you're a teenager seems so easy, every day after you're 18, that just seems to become more and more of a chore. So great point, Shashank. All right, let's get into the lightning round before we cue the outro. Jim, why don't we start with you? Final thoughts.
Well, just picking up on Shashank's last comment there. Remember, we used to make the distinction between renters and other movies. So the renters are the ones, right? And
Yep.
I don't even know what we would call the other ones. I'll see that in the theater, but
Yeah.
that other one, that's a renter.
Renter,
I can
yeah.
wait 3 months and pay
Or
the $5.
$6.
Or
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not a special effects thing. We don't need to see it on a big screen.
Yeah.
The score is not particularly memorable, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that distinction, I think, is maybe going to fall by the wayside a little bit. Other
Maybe
sort
what
of,
killed the rom-com in a way.
yeah, and that's true. But and also a couple other things too, though, is that comedy movies I find are a little better sometimes. Maybe not in a packed theater, but you feed off the energy. It's not theater, like traditional theater going, but you get the energy from the crowd when you see something like a horror movie or a comedy, and I think those things are kind of irreplaceable. And the last thing I have is a story, and it's a real quick one. My wife and I, years ago, when the Two Towers first came out, I think I told Rob this before. The Two Towers came out, and at the very end, in Helm's Deep, when our heroes are cornered by the army of orcs, you hear the marching of feet, and a bunch of people in armor come. Spoiler alert! It's the elves. They finally decided to help out, and this was the opening weekend. And the people sitting next to us clearly didn't know what movie they were in, had no idea about that there was a first movie. And the wife says to the husband, "Who are those guys?" And he says to her, "I think they're Egyptian." True story, verbatim. So these little experiences sort of, I like having those kinds of experiences in the movie theaters, but anyway, I just thought I'd end on that one.
You're telling me Orlando Bloom is not Egyptian?
Cody, why don't you give us your final thoughts, and then I'll wrap up we got a couple more comments, and then we'll shut her down. But Cody, what are your final thoughts on the subject for now? Because honestly, you and I, it was the 20th of November, and I honestly thought, oh well, we've had our kind of chat. We reacted to the HBO the DCEU thing, and it was like, oh well, okay, that was fun. and yet here we are. Okay, back to you, Cody. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I think Shawshank does bring up a good point in that I think people are starting to value their time a lot more, especially when it comes to going out to see a movie, where like how Jim mentioned with a comedy movie, it's like if you don't see it with like a theater with a lot of people or a packed theater, you're not gonna get the same experience. But like some of those movies, if you just waited till 3 months, you could rent it from Redbox or whatever, have some friends over, maybe get a little tipsy and watch it, you'll probably have a good time. So it's like the plan B of that kind of thing. So so I think it just comes down to a lot of major movies are still going to drive people to come to the theater.
Yeah.
Other smaller movies like rom-coms or things like that are going to be maybe pushed more towards the streaming side of things. And I think ultimately just comes down to, can Hollywood pump out movies that get butts in seats? I think that's just kind of the big thing there. And with this whole HBO Warner Brothers thing, we'll see where it goes. It's we'll see like where ticket sales go in comparison to all these movies. I for one got my ticket to go see Wonder Woman in Dolby Vision on Christmas Day, so I'm gonna support the theater that way. But I do think there'll be a good push for like more premium experiences with these movie theaters, and which might be the best option, honestly. So you get like, if you want like the absolute best experience, you can go to this nicer theater, pay a little more money. You can have like food brought to your table or whatever. I think that's also where like maybe a monthly subscription service might come in handy, like AMC A-List, where you could be like, for this fee every month, you can go see like a new movie or two every weekend at this very nice theater. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year. That's all I can really say.
Do you see one of these streaming services? Streaming services and theater chains do a deal where, hey, you pay a premium level on your subscription, and that gets you into the theater once a month.
Not a bad idea, honestly.
All right, listen, guys. Before I give my final thoughts, we do have a couple more, just a few more comments, and it looks like Shashank and Eric are having a nice conversation in the chat, which we are going to we're going to listen in. We're going to listen in on. So going back to all right. Eric Thorpe, that's why I would say specifically a series like Game of Thrones for theaters, since it's as cinematic as most movies, if not more. Certainly avoided what I am now calling Netflix middle key lighting. That's a thing I'm going to try and start. Shashank, horror and comedy movies, like kind of riffing. And back to Eric's comment about Game of Thrones. He's just correcting his English. All good, man. I knew it. I read it correctly.
I love Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Gams of Thrones. my sexist. Okay, Shashank. Indian theaters have opened up, and Tenet is sold out. All the other Bollywood classics from over 20 years are now running empty. I guess they were stuffing in theaters, even including, how old was Three Idiots? That was like from the
a few years back,
wasn't it?
Yeah,
God, that was a good movie.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, Shashank. Once again, it depends upon, he guesses it depends upon the exclusivity. Most of the big star Bollywood films are available on streaming and have been telecast a million times on TV. On the other hand, Tenet is an event film. And you're absolutely right. Oh, and maybe that'll be the language we start using. No, that's an event film. Mm-hmm. It goes to the theater. Eric... theaters, Shashank, Chris Stuckman has made a video regarding this topic. It's recommending we check it out. I saw it, like it came up in my feed, guys, and I was like, no, we got to have our conversation first. I don't want, I've been avoiding these things. It's like, Kempea, I don't want to hear your shit. Oh my God, you have an opinion. No, I'm not going to watch that. Okay. All right, Eric. Oh, sorry. Go ahead there, my friend. Cody?
I was just going to say, let's get Stuckman on this show. That'd be a good voice to hear.
That'd be interesting. Or maybe even our teacher there, Mr. Chandler.
That would be totally cool.
Yeah. Eric Thorpe, aren't theaters aren't open where he is at the moment, so he don't think he'll be seeing. Oh, Eric, I'm assuming you're here in Canada with Jim and I, because yeah, we're in the same boat. That was actually what I was whining about on the 20th when Cody and I were talking about this. It's like, whoa, well, what about this guy? All right, yeah, Eric, let us know where you're from, where you're hailing from. Okay, Shashank. It's a great idea, Rob. Yes, it is. And getting Sean Chandler in would be a great idea. Yes, it would be. And Eric's in TO. For those who, are familiar, kind of a Canadian vernacular for Toronto. And notice, I do not pronounce the T. It's a great way to know you're not from Canada.
The second T.
Toronto. Toronto.
The second T.
Tirana. Tirana.
Toronto.
Oh, the Upside Down. Also thinking Sean Chandler would be awesome. And, Eric Thorpe, though. Jeez, Mr. Thorpe. This man's a keener. Saw Tenet 3 times in theaters when they were open briefly.
I took a list of a look at list of 2021 releases, and one is called "The Man from Toronto" with Kevin Hart. So.
My goodness. Okay, Shashank. The show has guests all over the world. Global appeal. It's funny, actually. Well, you know what? I'm not going to spoil anything. We'll wait until Cody's got a little private project he's got we're cooking, and we'll pimp it out here on the show when he's ready to put it out there. All right. Let's see. We've got Upside Down as didn't see Tenet yet, but he's pre-ordered it on 4K.
I like your style, Dan.
Yeah, and he keeps upgrading, so gets the Upside Down gets slicker and slicker. Guys, I mean, I just agree. Like I thought this was a great conversation. What I love about this conversation, a lot of ideas come out, and as far as my final thoughts, yeah, I'm the one I'm watching is Netflix. What did they do? What did they get out of this? Like, that's I'm with Ed. I think the bulk of the conversation seemed to be Disney will be the next one to say, yeah, screw it, the rest of the year we're doing the same. I would go along with that. But who I'm watching, though, is Netflix, because they got to be going, all right, no more of this BS about we can't show at the same time. But well. So we'll take, this is our last comment, folks. Although with the lag, it's always hard. But Eric does chime in. Went to a bunch of other movies too in that gap while they were open. Went to movies I didn't even really want to see, just because now this is a man after her own heart, just because he felt like going to the theater. Right on, Eric. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Want to say on behalf of Jim and the channel and Cody, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. You know what? It's really makes what we're doing here worthwhile, that you guys come, you watch, you chime in, and this goes to you, Eric. I hope we see you back again. So Eric, Thanks for coming. Dan from the Upside Down, thanks for coming. Check out his channel if you got a chance. Shashank, great reviewer from Chennai, India. Check him out. And Shashank, thanks for making it. You know what? We saw Jamie Long. Thanks, man. We are the 3 most handsome men in YouTube reviewing right now. That's what I'm saying. I'm claiming that.
Jilly Duck.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. Thank you very much for coming by. Thanks for popping in, especially.
Get some sleep, man. Jeez.
I better do that one more time. I need a sync. Cynthia, thanks for coming. Ahmed, thanks for coming. Yeah, Have I missed anyone? I don't think I have. I think I got them all. Yeah, I did. So, you know what? Thanks everybody. Guys, I'm going to put you in the green room, so stick around. And as I kind of pull down everything, and I think.
Oh,
I've been in your